This picture changes everything, guys. The official website is giving us hints that we need to discover for ourselves. And right here, Mega Pokemon confirmed for Sun and Moon, and Mega Meganium even more confirmed, guys. You think I'm kidding, though? You honestly think I'm kidding? Well, what's that? That looks like a wristwatch, but that's what Game Freak wants you to think, because that's really a Mega bracelet. And look at his shirt. He's wearing Meganium on his shirt. I think that's all we need to know, guys. It's absolutely confirmed that there are Mega evolutions in Pokemon Sun and Moon, and then the Johto starters are getting Megas. Now, if we want to actually get serious about this video, we might as well just kind of break it down for the idea behind it, because the biggest question is that we are asking ourselves, where are the Megas? We've gotten so much other information, we've gotten all kinds of crazy stuff, but no Mega Pokemon. That's why people are kind of worried, especially with the Alola Pokemon being introduced. And that's really the crazy thing. Like, when we look at the Alola Pokemon, you know, we have Alola and Exeggutor, which is crazy and even becomes a dragon typing. But Pokemon have adapted for the Alola region, and it's a different form that's effectively an entirely new species of Pokemon. Different moves, different attacks, different stats, different abilities. It's real, and just the different typings, I think, are the biggest one. Like, oh, did you ever imagine an Ice Fairy Ninetales that's still a Ninetales? And people are wondering, like, if there's all this effort getting put into these new Pokemon, is there any room for Megas, or will there be a reason to introduce any more Megas? And it depends on how overboard Game Freak wants to go with the Alola region. I think that that's kind of like the big question here, because when we think about it, we already have tons of features, and it felt like, you know, a couple of weeks ago we already knew most of the features in the game, and then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, there's hyper training. Oh yeah, by the way, there's now Z moves and the Poke Ride service, I guess, and all these other things. It seems like there's just more and more getting put into this game. It's like, okay, where's the room for the other gameplay mechanics that we're familiar with? Now, I'm confident that there's still going to be Megas. I'm expecting at least 10 new Mega Pokemon, honestly. That you can't go through all of the design, you can't go through that much work to create dozens of Megas and then just decide to end it there. Like, I really like the idea of Megas. I think combined with Z moves, it really gives trainers tons of options, because Mega Stone, Z Stone, or Z Crystal, that's 2 of your items there, which means the other 4 items are going to be more valuable, which does help enforce, like, the item clause that Pokemon does in its official tournaments and online play. So when we break it down, like, competitively, it just makes sense to keep the Megas in, especially from, like, the game development standard and stuff, and adding on to it is really nice, because still, a lot of Megas are getting picked more than others. I honestly feel like they need to nerf a couple of Megas and then maybe buff some other ones. Like, cool, I like the idea of having Beedrill and Pidgeot, but you need to make them just a little more stronger in some way to make them viable. And it feels like that instead of giving just Kanto Megas, what they've done is they've gone with the Alola forms, because maybe that's where Game Freak got a little over-eager with Megas. They maybe thought, hey, if every Mega is really awesome, then maybe people will just kind of pick them equally, and we can revive older Pokemon like this. Because, yeah, no one's using Sandslash, no one's using Exeggutor. Ninetales still gets some play, but after Charizard Y came in, it invalidated the only reason to use Ninetale for its Drought ability. So with this, it at least makes it to where now we don't have to worry about, like, Megas, and then it's like, oh, now I have to use Mega Ninetales instead of all the other Megas that have been introduced. So adding too many Megas can be a problem, since you only get 1 per battle, and the super strong ones will win out, but then that brings us to, like, this. I think there's still room for Megas. Like, the Johto starters deserve Megas. Some of the other Pokemon, like Mega Flygon, it's also one of those things, like, where do you put the power? Because naturally these Alolan Pokemon aren't going to be as strong as Megas, so it looks like if Game Freak wants to have a Pokemon become viable, they'll give it an Alola form. They want it to be, like, hyper viable and super strong, and maybe even, like, one of the strongest Pokemon, then they can give it a Mega, and I think those options still make sense. Now, one thing against the Megas is that if we go to Cerebi and we look at their news, this was when we were supposed to get our Mega information, so Archive News, August 2013. Like, I don't even know why I was thinking July. So in August of 2013, we got Mega Pokemon announced, and it was pretty crazy because it just showed the diversity of Pokemon. We have Pokemon that are already fairly common, like Blaziken, because Speed Boost is insane. Lucario is getting some use, and it's like, wow, what happens when these strong Pokemon become stronger? But then Pokemon that are never used in battle ever, like Absol or even like the Mawile. Oh yeah, Mawile went from useless to, wow, this thing's really good. One of the strongest Megas out there. Then we see Ampharos. Also, it's kind of wondering like, hey, cool, we're getting Mega Blaziken, and that means all the other stars are getting Megas. Not initially. Now, it did come out on Mega Meganium Sapphire, but it shows, like, the rules for Megas are whatever. This Pokemon can get a Mega just because. And then in September, we saw more Megas. We saw the Kanto starters. And then people like, okay, when the rest of the starters get Megas. Man, I would love to see a Mega Typhlosion. Also, Meganium just doesn't seem that viable. However, if we're going, like, off of Executor rules to where, oh yeah, this Pokemon now becomes a crazy Palm Tree, I'd imagine that Meganium gets really, like, amped up by the Alola region. So it could realistically be an Alolan Pokemon. If it also gets a Mega, that'd be pretty cool as well. I think the only difference here is the time. That XY came out in October, and then we have Pokemon Sun and Moon coming out in November. So they were cutting it really close on Megas. True, they kind of teased it before that with like Mega Mewtwo Y, but we didn't know if that was just an alternate form, and then we found out that's called a Mega Evolution with that whole reveal right there. So they waited till August to give us like all the clues and to finally put it in there. And now that means September, October game's out. Well, here, since it's come out in November, that means technically September is like one of the last months for doing it. I don't know if they'd cut it closer than that, or maybe to kind of show, but I would love to see some teaser. I'd love to see an image somewhere of an existing Mega Pokemon, because at least we could get thinking about it. But I'm wondering if like the Alola way is the way to go, because yeah, a lot of the Mega Pokemon that were supposed to make older Pokemon viable just aren't ever used because you only get one Mega Pokemon. So keeping that mechanic could still be interesting. And then it's like, okay, now teams are going to be wild because like you get your Z move Pokemon, you get your Mega Pokemon, you get like 2 Alolan forms, and then what's left to use? It's going to be so difficult to make teams now because the options that you'll have will be so vast, because we only see 3 Alolan Pokemon, but you know there's going to be many, many more. There's already hints of a Fire-type Marowak from one of the leaders of the Island Trials. So, you know, it's a mix of conspiracy theory, but yeah, where are the Mega Pokemon? They have to be in the game. Like, there's no way you can put that many resources, that much of a, I would say, a healthy thing. Like, I enjoyed Pokemon battling with Megas more than any other battling I've had, so it's a really good concept. Like, if you just balance out the Pokemon that people are spamming that don't make it as fun, like, you know, Mega Salamon's maybe a little overtuned, maybe Mega Kangaskhan. Now, I personally don't have problems with Mega Kangaskhan because I run Sableye, but, you know, it's just one of those things that I think Mega's brought a different level of balance, also a different level of prediction, you know, that if you think you're going up against Charizard, well, it could be a physical Charizard or a special Charizard, depending on where it Megas, and it keeps people on their toes, but also incorporates into your strategy by being unpredictable. Mega Venusaur, like Mega Blastoise, all these Pokemon right here are really fun to use, so I would hate to see that mechanic go away, that it gives you that option to, you know, lose an item and take a stronger Pokemon, or just kind of mix up your team dynamic. And even then, you could have 2 Pokemon that could potentially Mega on your team, and if you don't choose to Mega one, or like, it's pretty much up to the choice right there, and then it could really keep your opponent guessing. But then there's some Megas that, you know, if I feel like Alola Beedrill, Alola Pidgeot, those would have worked way better if they were just called Kalos forms. Kalos forms, like, half the Megas would work out. So it kind of shows, like, is Game Freak either going back on the concept of Megas, or is it too much to have Alola Pokemon, all these different kinds of Megas, and then introducing a new generation? Now, it's going to be a lot larger than Kalos. That with X and Y, even though we got like 28 Mega Pokemon, we only got like 70 Pokemon introduced. So it's still less than 100 total, or like around 100 total. I don't remember the exact numbers at this time. But since we already have like 36 revealed Alola Pokemon, it really makes things interesting, because that's the amount of Kalos Pokemon that we ended up seeing. So we're already past that number, and we still have months until the game comes out. So there could realistically be, you know, 100 Kalos Pokemon. How many Alola... So there could realistically be like 100 Alola Pokemon being introduced. And then the forms of the Alolan Pokemon, that could be another 20, 30, maybe even 40. Who knows how many they could be? Like, this seems like a very broad way of doing it. Like, Megas, you can't introduce too many Megas because of the one turn thing, or the one battle thing. But with Alola Pokemon, there's really no limits. Whatever Pokemon that feel Game Freak needs to be buffed. And they're doing it in a really interesting way. So that could be pretty fancy right there, and I guess that's really all that there is doing. You know, it's mostly talking about like the competitive ideas behind the Alolan Pokemon, but at the same time, it all started from this guy's wristband. Like, is that a Mega bracelet? Like, if that's a Mega bracelet, then Megas are back, but are they going to introduce more Megas with this whole Alola concept, and why is he wearing a Meganium shirt? Because, like, Johto starters are like up there with some of the most wanted Mega Pokemon, next to like Mega Flygon, Mega Milotic. Is there room for that, is kind of the question. Like, I mean, I feel you would need a Mega Flygon. I love its typing. I love the way that plays out. Like, Alola Flygon's like, what would we have? Well, actually, we can't do Grass Dragon because for some reason Executor is a Grass Dragon. So, I mean, Like, would they just make it pure dragon type? How would they really mix up the Flygon would be the question, or something like that. And then would it take away too much from the identity of Flygon to where it just doesn't feel like Flygon got a buff? They just remade Flygon. So, delicate territory. We could maybe see more Megas, more Pokemon, and bring in like the effective roster of Pokemon, because these aren't going to count for species. But if there's 100 Alolan Pokemon introduced, well, and then we have Megas on top of that, and then we also count all the species of Pokemon existing, could there realistically be, I don't even know how many Pokemon we could hit at that point. We're already at 720, so would that make us like effectively have 900 Pokemon? If we count each Mega as an individual, each Alolan form as an individual, plus all the Alola Pokemon? That's a lot. That's a pretty crazy amount to think about. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Tell me what you think in the comment section below. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.